Are things heating up, or are things just going to be this way and little drips until spring training starts?
Yeah, it's been a slow boil so far. Always good to see you, John. Of course, Bob, welcome back. Good to see you as well. I think what's happened is it's been a remarkably slow free agency. We've seen this the last few years where, in the past, November, a couple of guys would sign. The December winter meetings was a really busy time, and then things would slow down. But, with Scott Boras, who represents so many of these clients, he's unafraid to kind of play the slow play and just kind of draw this thing out, wait till spring training. And it's a fascinating conversation because I was asking Steve Phillips, the former Mets general manager, does this favor the player or the team? Because there's so many names, like you said, that are still out there. Blake Snell, Cody Bellinger, among others. And he said, it depends. Steve goes, sometimes as a GM, I would start to get antsy because I'd say there's an A, B, and C plan. And once A and B are gone, I'd want to get C done. So because I would start to get antsy if I didn't have my guy and I might have an overpay. But at the same time, I would think it hurts the players more so because you start to look around. There's a supply versus demand issue. Let's look at Bellinger specifically. So the Cubs and the Blue Jays are the most interested suitors we would believe. And, I look at his numbers, and I was talking to Harold Reynolds about it, my tag team partner, and he said, hey, he made $20 million. He wants to raise it 25. He goes, I think he's 5 for 125, 5 for 130 maybe. I was like, okay. I said, but Boris is going to want 7 for 210. He said, yeah, that's outrageous. He said, this guy, he's a really good player. He's a former MVP, but he had 3 bad years and he had 1 great bounce back year. But is he all the way back? I'm not 100% sure. So that's a pretty wide gulf between 125 and 210, if those are the numbers that are out there. So eventually, specifically in that situation, he's trying to get the Cubs and the Blue Jays to pony up. But if there's not enough other suitors, how is the price going to go up? And if one of those teams eventually, the Blue Jays go, we're just going to punt. We're just not going to do this. And the Cubs decide to reduce rate, it does end up hurting the player. So the good news is the biggest guy out there, Ohtani, did sign, just after the winter meetings. That was obviously a massive deal. The Yankees getting Soto, I think, is fantastic for New York. That's exactly the guy they needed. He's an absolute stud. He's got 1 year till free agency. He's going to get $350, $400 million. And I think he's going to have a spectacular season when you pair him with Aaron Judge. And unfortunately for the Blue Jays, obviously they missed out on Ohtani. We were all following a certain airplane. Didn't work out the way we wanted it to. And Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, I mean, that's with all respect, it's been uninspiring so far for Toronto.
What do you think the impact of the Ohtani deal was?
So
like $70 million. Nobody's going to get anything close to that, but did it raise the bar significantly?
I don't think so, Bob. I think that's an outlier. I think that's one of those that you say,
I agree.
All right, Ohtani is the unicorn that he is going to demand something out of the stratosphere, but that doesn't lift everybody else up. Nobody says, okay, well, if Ohtani's worth that much, Bellinger gets X, Y, and Z. I don't think it works that way. I'm still stunned by the price, Bob. I remember, again, talking with Harold about it, and he said at one point, he goes, if he's fully healthy, I think he gets 700. And then once he got hurt, we all know it's Tommy John. They don't want to call it Tommy John. He said it feels more like minimum 10 for 500, maybe 550, 600. I said, yeah. I said, I could see 12 for 600, 12 for 550 feels right. And then to see 10 for 700, I mean, my eyes popped out of my head. I said, considering this guy's injury history and the fact you're going to be a 2-time Tommy John guy, there's very few players who have been able to pitch still at a high level, Nathan Eovaldi among them. But I'm not kidding, fellas, when I say it's single digits. So I would be very skeptical that Ohtani is going to go back and give you 5 good years as a pitcher. It's just not going to happen. I think it might be 3 good years as a pitcher and then 2 average years as a pitcher, and then that's it, and then 5 more years as a hitter. But as far as the contract itself, it's fascinating the way it was deferred. When I saw he's getting $2 million a year, I thought it was a joke. I said, that can't possibly be true. Who on earth would defer $68 million a year out of a $70 million a year contract? But it goes to show that he clearly cares about winning. He knows the Dodgers can then use that money to go get other players, which is exactly what they did by getting Yamamoto, who's supposed to be a stud. That price got raised. Originally, we thought that might be 8 for 240, ends up being north of 300, just eclipsing Garrett Cole at 325. And they couldn't make that deal unless Ohtani agreed to the deferral. So not only is he a spectacular player, but he's a good teammate because he was willing to take less money, at least at this point. He'll get his money eventually, so they could sign Yamamoto. So I think the big story of the offseason has been, one, not a lot of activity, but the activity is all coming out of Los Angeles because they got Ohtani. They got Yamamoto and Tyler Glass now, John's a great trade.
Well, but it has surprised me that there hasn't been much news after the 2 Japanese players signed.
Yeah.
And I think there was a real expectation after both Ohtani and Yamamoto signed that we would get some closure with a Cody Bellinger.
Yeah.
And why it hasn't happened, obviously, because teams aren't prepared to pay those kind of dollars with inflated dollars at this point, and they're just going to have to wait. And do you think there's a chance in all of this, Adnan, that guys are going to be forced to take 1-year deals again? Like do a one, I mean, we've seen that a lot recently.
Yep.
And it's true. What happens is, fellas, like sometimes the guy does get paid. Like I think Bellinger's going to get his money. Blake Snell, Josh Hader, Jordan Montgomery, I think is going to do very well. Like those four specifically are big name free agents. But I look at a guy like JD Martinez, who was an all-star this year, had a really good bounce back year with the Dodgers. And he's probably looking for a multi-year deal in his mid-30s, but he might be a guy that goes, you know what? I was hoping for 2 for 30, but I'll just take a 1 for 15.
Right.
Those mid-tier guys. Justin Turner had an excellent year with the Red Sox. I was surprised how robust he was offensively. Most guys want a 2 or 3 year deal, of course, especially veteran guys like that in their 30s. But they're going to look around and go, okay, you know what? Higher AAV 1-year deal. If that's what it has to be, then I'll take it. But you're right, John. Ultimately, it comes down to the players' asking prices are too high for the owners. And the other part of it is this isn't just the owners being, skittish when it comes to spending big money. There's this whole issue of the RSNs, which again, people can explain it smarter than me, but the regional sports networks, there was so much money that was coming in that was really influx for those teams. And for certain teams, they're not sure where that money is going to be if and when it is even coming, right? Like some of it's owned by Sinclair and Major League Baseball might take over some of that. So if you start to look around and go, okay, we've got this money from attendance, this money from merchandising, this money from revenue sharing, but this television money that we were expecting from our local television isn't as high, you do have to make some adjustments. And I think some teams are dealing with that.
You didn't mention Chapman, the Blue Jays third baseman. What do you think? What is the situation with him? Do you think he's asking for too much? Do you think he's a long-term guy, or is he, this is the best defensive third baseman in the game? What do you think of him?
It's a great question, Bob, because I'm with you. His defense is amazing. And, for years, Arenado was the best defensively, and then he had a step back this year. So he actually didn't win a Gold Glove, which was shocking because it was always a perennial thing. So you can certainly make a case for Chapman being as good defensively as any other third baseman. But offensively, it really fell off a cliff after May 1st. I mean, that April, he looked like he was in the MVP conversation.
Oh, yeah.
And after that, had like a 660 OPS. Like, he was terrible. So I think when teams look at Chapman, you go, okay, elite defense. He's a 3-WAR player. He's going to hit me 20 to 25 home runs at least, but he's probably hitting 210. Like I need a little more to that. And he doesn't walk a ton. He strikes out a lot. So I think, again, his contract probably feels like about 5 years for 100, which, to me, that's a good going rate for a guy who's, again, great defensively and does those things, $20 million a year. But his asking price might be a little bit higher than that. Maybe he's looking for 120, 125. Maybe he's looking for 7 years rather than 5. But to me, I think Chapman, if I see 5 for 100 from a team, I think it's pretty good. If I got 5 for 90, I think it's really good value for the team. But he looks like, to me, a $20 million player a year on this market at this time.
Can you imagine paying a guy $20 million a year and hit south of 225?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, come on.
Yeah. There was a time.
What is going on in the sport?
I'm with you. As lifelong baseball fans as we all are, there was a time a couple of years ago, it was early in the season. I get it. Everyone says, well, it's cold. The bats will heat up once the weather gets warmer, blah, blah, blah. But I looked and I said, I can't believe this guy. I can't remember the player was, but I see he's hitting 237. They go, no, that's above average. And I go, what? The league average at that time in the American League, June 1st, was 235. And I go, that is just appalling. Like I would love to see, and there's been so many great things with baseball. I love the pitch clock. I think it's done great wonders for the game. I love the fact that we had different teams in the World Series. But if I have an even greater wish, it's that 250 was league average. Like, to me, if there's gonna be a lot of strikeouts in the game, like, I get that. Guys strike out, they want to hit home runs. I understand that. The sabermetrics approve of a 3-run home run, but I'm with you, man. If I'm paying you $20 million a year, you got to hit 250. I think that's a fair, reasonable argument.
Can you tell me, what is the point of having a hitting coach in Major League Baseball? What is the point?
It's a great question, Bob. Sean Casey's a buddy of mine, was a great hitter for years with the Reds, a lifetime 300 hitter. He worked with us at MLB Network, I think almost since the inception. And then I was at the All-Star game, and then I was talking to Yonder Alonso, one of our colleagues, and he says, how about Case? And I go, what happened? He goes, he's going to the Yankees. I'm like, what, is he playing again? Like, is he like Gordie Howe? He goes, no, he's going to be the new hitting coach. And I said, wow. And I called him immediately, and I said, what are you doing? Like, this is a great job. You got a TV job, man. This is the best job in the business. You get to come here, talk TV, work 80 days a year, go back to your family. You're going to go on the road. He goes, listen, it's the Yankee pinstripes. He's very tight with Aaron Boone. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I said, basically your question, Bob, I said, but like, how much do hitting coaches have an impact? He goes, well, listen, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to say what I feel. I'm going to make my piece. I'm like, okay, cool. Fast forward 3 months later, of course, the Yankees did not make the playoffs, finished above 500. Sean made the difficult decision to step aside with the Yankees. He said, I want to spend more time with my family. He's got 4 kids. He's going to be back with the MLB Network, which is great news for us. But when I asked him about the experience overall, he said it clearly wasn't what he was expecting. It was a fun experience. Again, he adores Aaron Boone, and they're close, and it was a difficult decision because it is the Yankees. But this is not a time, Bob, from 10, 20 years ago, the hitting coach would sit down with the guy and go through video. And now a lot of guys have their own hitting coach. Like they just have their own guy. Like Aaron
Right.
Judge is his own guy, right? So Sean Casey could give input, but Judge is kind of like, hey, thanks for the advice, but I already got a guy. Okay. And he told me stories about working with Giancarlo Stanton. And Stanton would be like, okay, like I understand what you're saying, but I'm just going to do it my way. So it's tricky. Like it's not that the players are disrespectful. I just think that they don't have necessarily a certain appreciation for hitting coaches. I think it might help, Bob, with younger players. Like Case told me, and Anthony Volpe of the Yankees was receptive to listening. DJ LeMahieu, who's a veteran player, was receptive to listening and did listen. But you're right. I mean, by and large, hitting coaches do not have the same influence I think they had 20 years ago.